What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for NFL playoffs, championship round, top DFS picks.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon.
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for this week's NFL slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, NFL playoffs. This is the conference championship round. So let's take a look at this 2-game slate. At the quarterback position, I like Patrick Mahomes from the Kansas City Chiefs playing the Cincinnati Bengals, who have a good defense overall. They've been good versus opposing quarterbacks, but Patrick Mahomes has averaged 23.2 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 3.9 rush attempts per game. He's projected at 24.2 fantasy points here in the conference championships, and he is $7,400 DraftKings salary, $1,400 more on FanDuel. Patrick Mahomes has scored 41, 26, and 21 fantasy points in the last 3 games, and he got 3, 9, and 2 rush attempts in those games. So Patrick Mahomes has monster upside. This guy is awesome under pressure. He really does remind me of a young Tom Brady. Just very hard to beat this guy. He excels under pressure, which makes him a fantastic playoff player. So I like Patrick Mahomes here versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, if you want to save some salary at the quarterback position, take a look at Matthew Stafford from the LA Rams playing the San Francisco 49ers, who have a good defense overall. They're middle of the pack defending opposing quarterbacks. Matthew Stafford has averaged 21.8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 1.9 rush attempts per game. He's projected at 21.3 fantasy points here in the conference championship round of the playoffs, and he's $6,300 DraftKings salary, $1,200 more on FanDuel. And Matthew Stafford has scored 32, 24, and 20 fantasy points in the last 3 games. He got 4 and 6 rush attempts in the last 2 games. And he's got some capable wide receivers, of course, Cooper Kupp, but Odell Beckham Jr. is good under pressure, and he's been playing pretty well. They also got Van Jefferson and a capable tight end, so plenty of people to throw the ball to. Cam Akers is back, and he's opened up the run game. So just a strong offense for Matthew Stafford to work with here. And his salary is pretty reasonable, so I like Matthew Stafford here versus the San Francisco 49ers.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal,
all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won.
And we'll send you $25 PayPal.
So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. I like Joe Mixon from the Cincinnati Bengals playing the Kansas City Chiefs, who have a middle of the pack defense overall. They've been pretty good versus opposing running backs, but Joe Mixon has averaged 18.6 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 18.3 rush attempts per game and 3 pass targets per game. And Joe Mixon is projected at 16.8 fantasy points here in the playoffs, or here in the conference championship round of the playoffs. I'm just going to say here in this playoff game. And Joe Mixon is 6,800 DraftKings salary, 1,400 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 54.5 points scored in this game, with the Bengals trailing by 7. So this is a good game to stack here. Vegas has this as a super high scoring game. And with the Bengals within a touchdown, Joe Mixon should be fine. He also catches balls out of the backfield. Now, only averaging 3 pass targets per game on the season, but he did get 7 and 5 pass targets the last 2 games. So a little more involved in the passing game here in the playoffs. Joe Mixon has scored 23 and 12 fantasy points in his last 2 games, off of 14 and 17 rush attempts, on top of that 7 and 5 pass targets. So I like Joe Mixon here versus the Kansas City Chiefs. So he's probably my favorite running back on the slate. Now, he is the most expensive. So if you want to save some salary, and I guess if you factor in the salary, this is probably my favorite running back on the slate in terms of value. Take a look at Cam Akers from the Los Angeles Rams playing the San Francisco 49ers. Cam Akers, I mean, he only scored 8 fantasy points last week, but he had 24 rush attempts and 3 pass targets. Now, the Bucks are very good defending the run, and I think that he's going to get a little more opportunity here versus the 49ers. And I mean, I think he's going to score more fantasy points here versus the 49ers. And he's probably going to get a bunch of touches in this game. And Cam Akers, he's projected at 13.8 fantasy points here in this playoff game. But Cam Akers is only 5,000 DraftKings salary. He's 12,000 more on FanDuel. I just think he's a bit underpriced here, or he might be priced right, but just a good value play for the amount of touches and the upside that he's going to have at that price point. So Vegas thinks there's going to be 46.5 points scored in this game, and they have the Rams favored by 3. So, like I said, Cam Akers, he hasn't put up a ton of points in the past 2 games, only scored 8 and 11 fantasy points in the last 2 games, but he got 24 and 17 rush attempts on top of 3 and 2 pass targets in those games. So he's just touching the ball way too much for him not to break something and put up some big points. So I like Cam Akers here versus the San Francisco 49ers. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. So you got Cooper Kupp, you got Deebo Samuel. Those are the 2 studs on the slate. But now the other stud on this slate, and he's priced down a little bit. I mean, I think he could be up in the 7,000s, but he is only 6,700 DraftKings salary and 1,300 more on FanDuel, playing in a super high scoring game that could turn into a passing game script with a fantastic matchup. And he's been putting up big points lately. So I'm not sure why he's not priced in the 7,000s, but I like Jamar Chase from the Cincinnati Bengals playing the Kansas City Chiefs, who have a middle of the pack defense overall. They give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Jamar Chase has averaged 18.9 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 7.5 pass targets per game. He's projected at 19.5 fantasy points here in this playoff game, and he's 6,700 DraftKings salary, 1,300 more on FanDuel. So we know Vegas thinks there's going to be 54.5 points scored in this game, with the Bengals trailing by 7. And Jamar Chase has scored 19 and 26 fantasy points the last 2 games, off of 6 and 12 pass targets. So everything kind of lines up for this to be one of my favorite wide receiver plays on the slate. So I like Jamar Chase here versus the Kansas City Chiefs.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL. NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, now this guy was a letdown last week, but I do think he is a good value play. It's Tyler Boyd from the Cincinnati Bengals playing the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's averaging 11.7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5.9 pass targets per game. He's projected at 10.6 fantasy points here in this playoff game. He's $4,200 DraftKings salary, $1,600 more on FanDuel. So he was a big letdown last week. He had a fantastic cornerback matchup, just only got 3 pass targets, scored 4 fantasy points, but I do expect him to get more pass targets in this game. I think it's going to be a pass-heavy game for the Cincinnati Bengals, and I still like the Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd stack. Both those guys, pretty reasonable salary for their upside, and I do think the Bengals are going to be passing the ball an awful lot in this game. So I like Tyler Boyd here versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, if you want a value play from Kansas City, take a look at Byron Pringle, who has scored 21 and 11 fantasy points in the last 2 games off of 7 and 8 pass targets. He's only $4,300 DraftKings salary, $1,400 more on FanDuel. So that's a way to get some low salary exposure to this high scoring game. So I like Byron Pringle as a value play here versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, another wide receiver that I like is Odell Beckham Jr. from the LA Rams playing the 49ers. Odell Beckham Jr. has scored 13 and 17 fantasy points in the last 2 games off of 8 and 4 pass targets. He's projected at 13.3 fantasy points here in this playoff game. He's $5,100 DraftKings salary, $1,200 more on FanDuel. He's played pretty well these past 2 playoff games. He's getting targeted quite a bit, and he's got some big upside. I think he can get a touchdown in this one as well. So I like Odell Beckham Jr. here versus the San Francisco 49ers. Okay, moving on to the tight end position. I like Travis Kelce from the Kansas City Chiefs playing the Cincinnati Bengals. And Travis Kelce has averaged 17.2 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 8.4 pass targets per game. He is projected at 20 fantasy points here in this playoff game, and he's $6,500 DraftKings salary, $1,200 more on FanDuel. Travis Kelce has scored 29, 13, and 13 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 7, 5, and 7 pass targets. So I like that his salary is only $6,500 DraftKings salary. This is another guy that could be $7,000 or more. So I will easily pay $6,500 for Travis Kelce in this high-scoring game. So I like Travis Kelce here versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay, and another tight end or another player that I think his salary is a little bit low, although I guess you could justify it with his lack of performance in the past 3 weeks. I like George Kittle from the San Francisco 49ers playing the LA Rams, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, but they give up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. George Kittle has averaged 14.9 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 6.7 pass targets per game. He's on the field for 92% of the snaps, projected at 14.4 fantasy points here in this playoff game. He's $5,000 DraftKings salary, $800 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 46.5 points scored in this game, with the 49ers trailing by 3. Now, George Kittle has only scored 10, 3, and 6 fantasy points in the last 3 games, off of 6, 3, and 7 pass targets.
So production is down a little bit under his season average, but his salary is also down, and I think he is going to pop this game. He's got a good matchup, so I like George Kittle here versus the LA Rams. Now, if you're looking for a value play at the tight end position, you could go with Tyler Higbee from the Rams, or you could go with CJ Uzomah from the Cincinnati Bengals. Both these guys are in good spots here for their price point. Tyler Higbee got 7 pass targets last game. CJ Uzomah got 8 pass targets last game. So these guys don't need much to hit value at their salary. So either of these guys are good value plays here at the tight end position.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.